Welcome to Tawana Talks, where I give my reflections on simple life experiences that lend themselves to life.
Welcome to Tawana Talks back. And I am here with the fabulous Martia Edwards, but also known as Tia. Those who love and know her call her Tia. And so you will grow to love and know her as well and be able to call her Tia also. But Tia has agreed to join me here on Tawana Talk Back, and I'm so excited about that. Let me just tell you a little bit about Tia. She is a fabulous, most patient boy mom. She has two little ones. She is a wonderful wife, and her and her husband are raising two little ones, but they are also expecting another one and another boy. So Tia is all the way boy mom. Now, before we dive into you, Tia, because I want the audience to know more about you and who you are and who you show up as in your personal life and in your professional life, as well as the life of your children and your husband. But I want to ask a more important question.
Okay.
Is Tia?
Okay. So I am a believer. Like you said, I'm a wife, I'm a boy mom, I'm a mental health therapist, but I'm also learning to use my voice more, which is so exciting while I'm even here with you right now. But I'm learning to utilize the voice that God has given me. I just want to be more open. I want to share more because, as you know, I talk with Tawana all the time. I am very vulnerable. I am very transparent. When you catch me one-on-one, we will talk for hours.
Yes.
But I want to use my voice more to share with others.
Yeah.
I want to just show the world, tell the world about all the testimonies I have. I want to just become the woman of God, that He's called me to be. Ultimately, it's where I'm at right now. So I'm on this journey of self-discovery and, just being a leader.
Yeah, I get that. I like the becoming. I like to challenge that a little bit more and say continue to be, because we are always becoming, I think.
Absolutely.
And so shout outs to Michelle Obama for that book. I was waiting for her to give me a call back. She probably was calling up. I had changed my number, Michelle, so if you just reach out to me on here.
Yes.
But yeah, that's wonderful. I want to go back to what you said, because the one thing that you highlighted in your fabulousness, and your number one important job is obviously the boy mom and being a wife and a woman of God. However, the highlight that you have a voice. You and I can talk all the time, but you are a mental health therapist.
Right.
That right there, especially not just in the time that we've been in, post-COVID, during COVID, and all the things. I think that profession has been highlighted even more. Typically, and I know you can speak more to this, people seek mental health counseling when something is wrong.
Yes.
But I think the pandemic has also highlighted and made sure that people understood that it's just a part of life that should be incorporated in their daily life, because it helps to what I say is, and by no means am I the professional in this, I just had small training for it. But what I say is, in my career as an educator, when I would talk to students, I would tell them it's almost like having a file cabinet of files. And when you're going through something and they're all scattered over the floor, and you're looking at it, and to you, you're like, this is a mess. This is a utter mess. I can't get it together. I can't do this.
Yeah.
But when you speak to someone like a counselor, they're able to help you put those things in the appropriate files and file away. So now you see, all of those papers belong to this. And so you can go from this big pile to only 4 folders, and you're like, this is more manageable, and they help you to navigate that. Talk to us a little bit about that.
I think it's also, you'll be able to notice what goes with what. So a lot of times, what is the root cause of your anger, or what is the root cause of this anxiety? So by looking through all those papers, you're able to say, actually everything goes into this folder. So this has been the biggest issue, and I've been thinking that this is really the issue. So I think that's interesting. Sometimes I do believe counseling should be used more as a preventative measure. more often than it is. You said, most people, they come when they're in crisis. And it's like, you feel harder. It feels harder to like accomplish your goals during that time because you're like frustrated, like, okay, I've been coming to therapy for a month now and I'm not noticing any improvement. And it's like, you kind of can, like when everything just like hit the fan.
When it's falling apart.
Yes. Right. So I do think, more people, I have some clients now who are just starting to see me. Like, I would say majority of my caseload, kids are coming in from divorced and separated families. I would say about 80% of my caseload are experiencing that, small kids. And a lot of times, mom will want to bring them in, or dad wants to bring them in, and the other parent doesn't. Because the other parent's like, they're fine. Like, why are we coming in? But the other parent was like, so that we don't have to deal with certain issues moving forward. Like, let's just go to see if they're okay. Like, you announced that you were getting divorced, and 2 weeks later, one parent wants to start therapy, and the other's like, we don't need therapy. They're fine. And it's like, I'm like, it could be helpful to start therapy. That's big, to tell your children that you're divorced.
Yeah. So going back to your voice, I just want to, commend you, one, on being on here because I know we talked about that, and two, really highlight that your voice is big, even in the small spaces, because what you're doing is you're giving a perspective and you're giving a light to those that come that can't figure it out on their own, or are looking for someone to help them, not necessarily figure it out, because I know that you don't. This is your problem. This is what you have to do. But you help them to navigate. And so that voice that you are there, it creates a legacy and it resounds. So thank you for doing that. And then you mentioned about working with children and being able to look at the things that are happening in their lives and how those things affect them. And so you talked about the talk that I did on you should do, and in that talk, just you should go and listen to it if you haven't.
Yes,
but,
you should.
For that talk, I talked about giving kids a voice and allowing them, respecting their voice.
Yes.
And allowing them, and so realizing that sometimes as parents we have demanding tones and don't realize that they're demanding, and what does that teach our children, as well as how does that devalue them? Not that that's our intention. So why did that kind of resonate with you?
I think because a lot of times I tell my clients' parents that, like, let's give our children a voice. And I think so often, I don't know if it's just a cultural thing, but we don't respect our children. We feel like because they're young, like they don't have feelings or they can't feel anyway. And we get to just tell them what to do all day. Like, yes, we do have to protect them. And of course we do like give them instructions and directions that they're expected to follow, but we don't respect our kids all the time as a society. And I just love what you said, like, she was asking, well, she didn't ask you about her drawing.
I just about to give her.
You were going to just give her your thoughts and your opinion on what you thought she should do with her artwork.
Right.
And it's so natural, right? Like I would always tell parents, like, let's try not to do X, Y, and Z. But since becoming a parent, I see how easy and natural it is to want to offer those suggestions to your kids, because you're also just thinking, like, oh, well, I do think it would look better this way. And it made me think about something that happened last week that I cannot wait to get on here and share with you. But we were in the store, so we took Jackson to get some new shoes. And he's starting to now, he's 3, but he's starting to say, like, I like these shoes, or, pick out things. And so he picked out some shoes. He took them to Tyrese, and he's like he wants to try them on. And he's like, I like these shoes. And Tyrese is like, I don't like these. he goes, Tyrese was like, Jackson, I don't like these shoes. And Jackson, my 3-year-old, says, Jackson likes them. And me and Tyrese looked at each other and we started laughing, and we were like, okay. And I was like, that's right, son, you like them.
Yeah.
And so we started laughing. Tyrese was like, what am I supposed to say to that? And I'm
exactly,
like, right.
Exactly.
So it just made me think, like, if we continue to do that to our children, just tell them what they should do, how it will look better, what we like better. How will they cope when children in school do those things?
Right.
Or
Wow.
their teachers. So like, I don't need a little kid telling my son, like, I don't like your shoes, and that just ruining his whole day. He's crying and he can't, like, I want him to be able to say, Jackson likes them.
Yeah. Or even other kids saying, you got to do this, you should do this, and because that's what they're used to being told. So it's like, oh, I'm not supposed to speak up for myself. I'm not supposed to say other things. Or on the flip side, they could be the ones saying, you should, because that's what they always hear. And then that interprets as you're being bossy. You're being, you're being this, you're being that, you're not being a team player.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Especially at the age our kids are at. So like even in school, if they're working on art in school, or if they're building something with magnetic tiles or something like that, we really want to be cautious. Like we don't want to just say like, oh, you should do it this way, because kids at school, they, a lot of times I'll see my kids in the playground, they're like, do you like this? Like, do you like this?
Yeah, they're looking for acceptance, right?
Yeah,
right.
So normally I'll always say, well, do you
like it? Yeah.
And then they'll say, and I'm like, okay, I can see by that smile on your face that you really like it. You're really proud of yourself. You worked really hard on this picture. It doesn't really matter if I like it or not. It just matters if you like it. And so it's much easier to do that in a playground than it is with my own kids, I will admit, because naturally, and that goes negatively or positively, right? Like we want to be, careful to not always say, oh, that's so beautiful. Oh my gosh, because when you really feel that way, but then if you really don't and you're looking at the picture and you can't quite tell what it is, they're gonna pick up on that same energy, like, oh,
is that a horse? No, it's you. Oh wow. Oh,
okay. And then it's like, oh, you don't like it because you didn't say it was so beautiful how you did last, So I just try, like even now Jackson will show me something and it's literally just scribble. I don't know what it is, right? And I'm like, oh wow, you're really proud of that. So like that's how I'll like address it now rather than saying, that's so beautiful. Oh my God. Because there will be some times they're going to bring some artwork that you may not think is beautiful. And that's okay. But they're proud of their artwork. So like, how do you not like just shut them down or diminish creativity? So you just want to make sure that you're respecting your children and what they're doing.
No, I think that's really important. There was something, I don't know if it was a talk that I attended or something I was reading or training I was in or whatever, but I remember, and it's something I try to do, and I'm not perfect by it, but I remember when my other children were younger, that when they present something to you or they show you something, instead, or even their work or whatever, instead of saying things like, I'm proud of you, switching that and saying things like, you should be really proud of yourself. Because then they can have self-validation and not looking for the validations of others, bringing it to you. I was, a clip came on from Kevin Hart. I want him to give me a call back too. He probably called me. That probably was him calling me.
That was
Kevin. But I was listening to a clip from him and it was funny, but it resonated with me because he said, he was like, he is the dad that probably the unordinary, I can't remember his exact words, that accepts, the craziest stuff. And he was like, for instance, his son came home and got a C plus or a C minus on something. And it was a class that he had been struggling with. And that was the best. And so Kevin was like, oh, this is good. You can put this on the refrigerator if you want. And his son was like, this is a C. He was like, if you saw my stuff, you would be like, I didn't even hear that. He was like, but what I'm saying is, I know that he had been struggling like this. And so this was his best because he was struggling. And so therefore, I want to celebrate his success in that. You don't need to ascribe to do something that somebody else did. Don't try to be like me. If like science was my thing, math was my thing, that may not have been my children's thing. So I can't be like, well, I didn't got an A in this. Like if I know that you were giving it your all, so that's what he was saying. If I know that you gave it your all, then I'm going to celebrate you in that and say, yes, you did your best. This is great, work. Don't try to be like somebody else or get that's what their success is. Success is like a objective type of measure. It can't be like, well, you did this, so I have to do that. Like that may not be your capacity. They may not be even your calling. They might not even be your strength. Like even when it comes to art. My daughter sometimes says, this is not really good. And she sometimes is measuring it up to what my son does. He's an
Yeah.
artist, but she is too. I'm like, art is very subjective, honey. Like
Right.
your art is your art. Like
Yeah.
whatever it is, that's your art. You can't judge it to someone's like, well, theirs is better. What's better? Like I try to tell her stuff like, she'll be like, this wasn't that much fun. I'm like, there's no such thing. You can't measure fun. Did you have fun or you didn't?
Right.
This is that much. Like, no.
That's good. I need to keep that
It's
in
like,
mind.
it's a black or white. You did have fun or you didn't. Don't say that much. Like, there's no barometer. Like, was it a level 6 or a level 4? It's the same thing like with some of the work that you did. Was a level 8, was a level 10, especially if you've given it your all.
That's very good. It made me think about, like, I was never good at math, but my mom is really good at math. Like, she's an accountant, and my brother's really good at math. And in, what year was this? I think it might have been ninth grade. No, it might have been my freshman year in college. Either my freshman year in college or my freshman year in high school.
Okay.
I don't remember it. But either way, I got a C in my math class, like the final grade. And I've always been like, I made good grades, but math was not it. And I remember crying and being so frustrated and thinking my mom was gonna, like, I didn't know what she was like, because I had never made a C before. And she was like, did you try your best? And I was like, I did. And she was like, okay. Then that's all. That's all you can do. You tried your best. You do better next time.
Yeah.
And I remember like that changing the game for me. Like, then I remember the next math class, I made like an A, and I was like, how did I do this?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
But I think that was one thing that I can appreciate about my mom. Like, she didn't make a big deal about the things that she knew. Like she worked really hard. It's like, why am I going to like make her feel worse? And I think sometimes we do that with our children. Just like I say, as a society, like they already know when they're not doing well at something.
Right.
Sometimes it really is a struggle. They don't need you just highlighting it and just hitting them over the head all the time. You know,
it's that empathy measure, which honestly I struggle with.
Yeah.
When it comes to, and just being really transparent here, when it comes to things that you are doing that you know could lead to a problem, and then it happens, you're like, you gotta know. Like if you're jumping off the top of the stairs and then you fall, you hurt yourself.
Right.
I'm like, well, you knew that was a possibility.
Exactly.
Somebody said something, I think I shared this with you before. Somebody said something to me that helped to kind of shift my focus in that area. I still feel that way and I'm working at it. Like when it comes to things like, I know you tried your hardest, or when people are being mistreated and things like that, my empathy barometer is high. I'm like, I can empathize with this, I can feel this. Let's talk about how you feel. But when it comes to things like that was kind of like, it's like a 90-10 chance, like it was gonna happen. But they said something very profound to me, and they said, I get where you're coming from. People do things that they know could be a possibility. Why cry when you knew that was an option? But that does not diminish the pain that is there, that we felt. And I was like, oh. And now I'm still thinking like, well, the pain would have been there. It's like, yeah, but it is there. And so it does not take away the fact that they feel the pain from the said action. Yes. And so that helped me as a parent because, quite honestly, like my daughter is very active. And, she, has ADHD and her brain, that's how God made her. And so she thinks 20 steps ahead, and she's a creative and she's a gymnast. And I've noticed her gymnastic capabilities before she was able to walk. I was like, I cannot put enough barricades around this house. She's crawling over it. I'm like, this is crazy. This is a star. But so she used to climb on top of the table, and I'm like, get off the table. And she's like, why? That's another thing. Like we talked about why. And I'm like, and I want to go back to that too about the tone. And I'm like, because you can hurt yourself. And she's like, I think it's like, in her mind, I did this a million times. I didn't hurt myself. So that can't be the reason why. Because she said I could, but I didn't, so it couldn't be. And I'm just like, and then if she falls, I'm like, that's what I told you. It's like the pain is still there.
The pain
being able to say, honey, I know your leg is hurt. I know that really hurt. Not focusing on the action that caused it, because then you're devaluing the fact that they are feeling.
Exactly.
And then we can talk later about, let's go back.
Remember? Yes. It's so easy to do that, right?
Yeah.
Like you're like, it's very easy to mess with. See, that's why I told you to get down. You had no business, blah, 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 blah. You just want to go. But sometimes they're crying because of the pain, but also they could be crying from embarrassment too, just from like, they told me not to do this and I did it and then I did exactly what they said. What happened? You know, like, so you just never even think, we don't really know what they're feeling. So a lot of times with kids, they can't articulate it.
But it's important for us as adults to validate.
Exactly. That is the number one thing. So pretty much every time I have a parent session, I'm always checking to see if they're validating feelings. Like always, like I need to know, like when your child does X, Y, and Z, and these things happen, and yes, I know they have some challenging behaviors that you are frustrated with as a parent, but are you validating anything that they're doing? We often think about how hard it is to be a parent. It is also hard to be a child in 2023.
Yeah, it's hard to be a human.
Yes, a human. So, you know, I think sometimes just like I'm always checking. Like, how did you respond to that? Well, how did you validate that feeling? Like, we always want to go there, even with gentle parenting. People think gentle parenting is just you let your children walk all over you. That is not what that means. Like, gentle parenting is just a gentle approach to parenting.
Having that empathy.
Exactly, being empathetic. So, like, my child, if he continues to ask me for a snack, but I already know, like, he's had a snack and he's not getting any more until tomorrow or whatever.
Some people interpret gentle parenting as like, just let him have a snack.
Exactly.
That's not what it is.
That's what you mean. So, and guess what? He can still cry and have a tantrum, and I can tell him, I understand you're upset right now. Those snacks, those granola bars are so yummy. They're your favorite. Tomorrow you'll get to have them for lunch.
And let them feel those feelings.
Exactly.
That's true.
Exactly.
And you and I, we talked about that. For let them, those feelings are real.
He can have a tantrum, I think, or okay. Within, you know what I'm saying? As long as he's not hitting anybody, as long as he's not kicking, yelling, screaming, being disrespectful to us as adults, if he has a face of disgust because he's upset because he can't have a granola bar, I'm okay with that.
Fix your face.
But we talked about that. Like, fix your face. Like, why does he have to fix his face?
He's upset.
He's upset.
When I was a principal, I would train my staff and tell them, like, if you move a kid's seat and they're mad to move your seat, don't spend time in that. Right. Let them feel the feelings. You would be mad too. One, he's embarrassed or she's embarrassed.
Exactly.
Two, they want to sit there. Those are valid feelings. So oftentimes, like when we're, in study, like right now I'm studying the book of Joshua, but studying, I'm reading Priscilla Schreier's book, Discerning the Voice of God.
Okay.
Priscilla's probably calling me now.
You got mad people.
I got all these people calling me. But anyway, and one thing that she said, but I've heard this so many times before, even with our pastor teaching and things of that nature, is, and even as an educator, this is the best way to learn something and to understand it is put yourself in those shoes.
Yeah.
And so if you put yourself in the shoes of the person, then you can understand how they feel. So I would tell them, like, if you got moved out of your seat, you're going to be upset. What makes them less of a human than you are? That's
right.
And I thought about that even as a parent. Like, it's really egotistical, one.
Yeah.
And it's really superheroism to think that this child is such a superhero that they don't feel what I feel. It's like, wait a minute, you would feel this also. If you didn't get what you wanted, like, we have our own temper tantrum.
All the time. I'm like, we have temper tantrums, and we definitely should not be acting the way we act as adults. We have tools and everything. They don't even have the words to say how they're feeling sometimes, and we just act like literally, if Jackson goes because he can't have his granola bar, fix your face. You want me like? Why do I have to do all that?
You want me to give you something to cry about? This is something to cry about. Like, let them. I agree with that. Let them feel their feelings, because I think that in not doing that, then we raise a generation of children or people, humans, that start to lash out in unhealthy ways.
Yes.
When you got and not, by no means am I saying that children in places hit because their parents did not allow them to feel the feelings, but you have a multiplicity of that exhibit of behavior because they hadn't been taught to feel your feelings.
Exactly.
Like, that's a valid feeling.
But honestly, you gotta know, Tawana, what we're talking about right now is just not typical.
It's not.
In our community, even as Black people, like, we feel like we get to say all those things to our kids. We feel like people feel like sometimes when I say certain things that I allow my kids to ask, like to ask them why,
Yeah.
they're like, oh, like I must be this parent who lets their children walk all over them, you know.
And I think it's all about, like, I focus on, in my organization, I focus on helping parents to, one, remove their ego, because when we got our egos first and foremost, then that means nothing else matters.
Exactly.
So check your ego at the door. The second thing is changing your mindset. The way that things had been doesn't mean that that's always. Our parents did the best they could with what they had.
Exactly.
Yeah. Good, bad, or indifferent, however you felt about
Exactly.
that, it's what they had. Times have changed, so we need to evolve with that. And even more so, and I said this even like with education, like evolution happens because environments. So environmental change brings about evolution of the mind, evolution of things. So when we think about the evolution of technology, like right now, we're able to record something like this because technology has evolved.
Exactly.
We didn't have this, set years ago and things of that nature. We're able to, have cell phones in a way like earpods. We didn't have those types of things and things like that. But we also think about the evolution of education, the evolution of people. Our children are thinking and reacting different because the environment has changed, and especially at the pandemic, that time, there was so many stimuli and so much change in the world that it caused so much evolution and biological evolution of how, because evolution is the adaptation of what your world is currently, right? And so that has all happened. So when we think about changing your mindset, going back to that, you can't think that the way that your parent did it in the 70s or the 80s is going to necessarily work. And some people will say, well, you came out good. I grew up in a different time.
And I saw a clip like this on Instagram one time. It was like, I came out fine, and then it was like, yeah, but I deal with people pleasing. It's like all the things that we forget are still an issue. We should not be people pleasing.
I came out fine, except it's almost like the medicine that when they do the commercial, like this medicine will cure stomach aches, but it will give you ulcerative colitis. You're like, wait.
So I think that's something to pay attention to. Like I feel like there's so many behaviors that people have as adults now that they think I turned out fine. And it's like, but X, Y, and Z, or you have a hard time forgiving people, or you shut down.
All those things. So it's like let's look at those things. So that's the mindset part, and then the habits. Like my motto is a habit becomes a way of life, and so generating new habits and any habit is hard. How many times we do a habit for New Year's.
Oh my gosh.
And then by February 1st, you're like, about that. So habits are hard, and especially if that's the way your family has done it, that's the way other people, and then when you have societal things that are coming into play, like you said, oh, you must let your kids walk over you, so you got all of this combating with you, which makes you feel bad. But what would it look like if we had a community of people that supported the support, that's there? So when we think about, like we said, going back to our children, they are people. Before they're anything else, I would tell my students and my children, you are a person before you're my child. You're a person before you're my student. You are a person. And so let's treat people like people. Regardless of the fact that that's your child. But nonetheless, even with my child being my child is still a person. And so although we say it's my child, she don't belong to me. She's still a person. She's her own person. My older children are her own person. And same thing, like with yours. So when we think about the questions of why, the one thing that I talked about is, like you said, so many times in this conversation, they don't have the right verbiage because they don't have the life experiences to say, what am I really trying to ask? So the only thing they know is why.
And because I really want to know.
I really want to know. Because again, you're like what, Jackson's 3?
Yeah.
He's only been in the world for 3 years. That's not a long time.
At all. He hasn't even been talking that long.
Not a long time. So it's like, why?
And there's been so many times he's asked us why. Like I said, he'll say, oh, I want to go to the playground. And then we're like, well, we're not going to play. He's like, why? And then we'll tell him, and he's like, aw. So like sometimes we tell him, and he's like, oh, okay.
That makes sense to me.
Like, and he'll start to understand more and more, and probably will ask why less. He's never asking us like, why in a disrespectful way, or like,
But some
just
parents
refuse-
look at that
yeah,
just because they're asking
just because
why.
they're asking. Now I will say, like, okay, so normally I have so much patience. Like, I'm just a patient
You really
person
are.
in general, and so is Tyrese. Very patient. Honestly, he's way more patient than me.
How could there ever be a more patient person than you?
Listen, this man is way more patient than me. I want to be like him so much when I grow up. But he's so
relationship
patient.
goals.
He's so patient. So normally when Jackson said why, we had both agreed a while ago, because a lot of views we have similar views when it comes to parenting, very similar, because we both have backgrounds with children. So normally when Jackson asks why, we know exactly how we'll respond to him. But one day I was having a little, I don't know what kind of day I was having. Exactly. And so Jackson said, why? And that old black mom came out of me, black grandma, and I was like, don't ask me why. Because I said blah 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 blah.
I said what I said.
Yeah, I was like, don't ask me why, because I said that's what I told you to do, or whatever I said. And so then Tyrese, I went in the other room, and Tyrese was like, hey,
now why?
He was like, hey. He was asking why, because he really did. Like, he just explained it all to me, and I was like, yeah, I know what I was saying right now. Yeah, like, I'll go back to that. So here's the thing with parents, and I always tell parents this. This is actually a philosophy we would learn in grad school. It's not about what you do; it's about what you do afterwards.
Oh, that's good. That's good. That's good.
So even though my child is 3, a person would think, you don't have to go back to that. It's over. You told him. At the end of the day, you the parent. He needs to listen.
Synapses start to build, and that develops how they're going to talk to you later.
So I still go back to him, and I say, Jackson, you can ask me why. The reason why X, Y, and Z is because X. I still go back to address it, because that is not how I have been responding to him, by just saying, because I said so. You know what I'm saying? So I also don't want to like leave the conversation like that, because he's also like, whoa, you know, that doesn't happen.
That brings up a good point to even going back to what we said. If this is how you have always been behaving in a way, like, don't ask me so. It's never too late. Like you just said, it's not about how you respond, it's about what you do after. It's never too late to go back and say, hey, I know that I've been responding this way. I am working on changing and being able to do something in a different way that helps to, cultivate our relationship, bring us back together, whatever words you need to use at the appropriate age. But going back and doing that. I mean, I know I've experienced that with my grown children, even as being adults, relationships, having with friends, my younger child. Because your expertise is in mental health, I want to talk a little bit about like neurodivergent brains and ADHD, because that's my passion. Yeah. But even just going not so much specific in that, knowing that working with ADHD children, I'm sure that you've come across working with children as well. But in my experience, what I've recognized is things are black and white to some degree, but black and white in their mind. And so oftentimes children with ADHD need to know why, because that helps them to understand the world. For all children, but things have to make sense to them to do it. So I'll give you an example. My daughter is very mathematically inclined. Like she can look at a problem like answer 62. Wow. And I'd be like 1, 2, 3, carry the 1.
You're right. I'm like pulling on my calculator.
And I'm like, and I gotta look at it. Or I'll be like, no, just the way you do this problem, and she'll come up with another way. No, you take the 10, you add the thing, and I get that. I'm like, that's another way to do it. Good. But in school they want you to show your work. And so the black and white part is the words that you use. So I'll say to her, like, you have to show your work. And she's like, why? I'm like, because you have to. What she hears is have to. What she hears is the only way to get the answer is if I do it. Same thing like on the table, like you said. And so she's like, no, I don't have to. In someone's eyes who doesn't know, this is the gentle parenting versus not. Even when it comes to children with ADHD, you're looking like you're being disrespectful. Exactly. I said show your work. You have to do it because I said so.
And she's like, no, I actually don't have to show it.
And she's frustrated because she's like, no, I don't have to. And it's not a combative, like, I'm not doing what you said. She's like, I got the answer. It's 62. And so then I have to be creative in my mind and saying, well, You don't have to show it to get the answer. I can either say the teacher would like for you to show it. That may not be good enough for her. Like,
because then
I
I
don't
might
really
not
care
do
what
it.
she like. That's a lot of work for me because that's what you desire. I desire not to, you know, and not, you know, and that gets in a tricky space too when it comes to talking back. But knowing your kid well enough, so my answer to her has to be things like, I know she's a leader and I know she likes to help other people succeed. And so I have to look at it and say, you know, showing your work may help someone else get the right answer or may help someone else understand. So when showing your work, the teacher can have another way of explaining it because the way that you just explained it to me, I would have never thought to do it that way. And then she's like, well, if that's the case, I do want to show little Jimmy how to get this.
Exactly. Instead of just, I tell you to show your work. Like,
right. And I mean, by all means, our homework time is frustrating time because I just be like, oh my God. But yeah. So yeah, I think that. So what has your experience been with coming up with some tools to help parents who are navigating through raising children with ADHD and just raising small children, because although they, you know, may not have ADHD, they exhibit a lot of traits because they're still learning in a world.
Yes, exactly. Like I said, one of the things I'm always talking to parents about is validating feelings, because even for a child who has ADHD, if you're a parent who does not have ADHD, do you really know what it feels like?
Right, that's true.
So like validating what they're showing you, like, oh, this is frustrating for you. This is confusing to you. Like you're wondering, why do you have to show your work when you know how to find the answer without showing your work? You know, so always validating feelings and just being more empathetic, like you said, like respecting your children, really trying to tap into how you would feel. And I think also systems and routines.
That's true.
Systems and routines.
But continuous routines. Just because you have a system today and then tomorrow you have a system but it's different than today, that is a recipe for disaster.
Yep. And I think advocating for your children is one of the biggest things. Not only in the schools, but also around friends and family. Because that's the biggest thing for me that I'm learning how to navigate. I just want to be able to say, oh, you know, like I want to be able to just.
And in that space, you can say to the person, I said what I said.
Yeah. I want to be able to speak for my child, because your child's watching and they want to know how you're going to take.
Are you going to be my safe space?
Exactly. So advocating for your kids, if they're struggling with you know, symptoms of ADHD and someone's calling them out on it, but in your head, you're like, they're actually doing great. Like, instead of just letting them say something to your child, also, we're not going to be disrespectful either, but like, how do you then address that? How do you show your child that I have your back?
Yeah.
You know, because a lot of times they feel alone. If they have any type of diagnosis or ADHD, they feel like they're different from some people. So how can you let them know, like, I love you unconditionally. I have your back. You know,
and I just think that's what, you know, all children, you know, like you said, even like with being able to gentle parent up, like you must, you know, older folks always got something to say. You know, no disrespect to my older parents. I mean, because I know at one time, at any time, I will be there, but you know, the older generation will be the first to say, that ain't the way you do it, you know, whatever. And no disrespect to that, but being able to advocate for your child in that space where you understand what's going on, you're, you know, parenting that child, and we're not just parenting our 3 and our 8-year-old, we're parenting our 23 and our 28-year-old because we know that what we do is not what you do in that moment, it's how you come back to it later, that they're going to be older. And I thank God that I'm in a space where I have 1 here and I have 2 here. And so those 2 made me and this one shows me, but I'm able to reflect, I didn't do a great job at that. Talk to me about that with them. They kind of counsel me so that I can do a better job with this one and being, you know, conscientious about that. But again, being able to show up in spaces and places where you're advocating for your own child.
And teach them how to advocate for themselves. I think that's important too. So they'll be able to. That one of my things now is teaching Jackson even to have how to use his voice. Jackson was born in 2020, so he's a COVID baby, and he stayed at home.
I remember he
his
would
dad.
cry coming into.
Yeah, to Ethan, because he stayed home with me and Tyrese for like a year and a half.
Yeah.
He didn't see anybody.
Right?
Anybody. So if you see him now, he still walks in the room. He stands behind our leg. He's very close to us. He's very slow to warm up to people, and that's okay, right? I always say like that's fine. Jace,
that's the evolution of what does the environment do?
Yes,
you know.
So he's like,
and remember he's 3, so that means he had only a year and a half in, and a year and a half out.
A year and a half, he's literally with me and his dad every day. We both work from home. We weren't going anywhere. Right. So he really, he struggles sometimes in large settings. He gets very quiet. And a lot of times people think, oh, what is wrong? He shouldn't be acting like that. Yeah, he's 3 years old. And I'm like, you really don't know. He's not used to seeing this many people. Yeah. So he stays close to us. And he will warm up. But he's also kind of like me in one-on-one settings. But I noticed that he talks a lot at home.
That's his face.
A lot.
That's what he's been doing all the talking.
Yes, but if let's say he would have come here and he wants some fruit, he'll be like, and I'm like, yeah. You can talk very well. I know you can. Use your voice and ask for fruit. Yeah. And I'm doing that because I also want him to know whatever space he's in, he can ask for what he needs. Right. He can ask for what he wants. He doesn't have to be afraid to ask. And if a person says no, they say no, but I just want him to know he can ask.
You can still ask, right? No.
Yeah.
That's
so part of me, a lot of times, what we're doing to better ourselves, our children are watching, so we're modeling their behavior. So me learning to use my voice more, I don't know how it could impact my children, where they learn to use their voice more. I'm not really aware of how they're even paying attention to that, but you just never know,
right?
Right.
There was one thing, and then we'll kind of close out, but one thing that I wanted to bring up that we talked about that I think lends itself to this conversation. We went on so long talking about this.
We keep talking.
The one thing that I want to bring up, we went on so long, and I think that it really is important to mention here. We talked about, how, back in the day when somebody's like, say hi, your kid, somebody says hi to your kid, you can speak, say hi, or give them a hug. And that goes back to what we talk about, advocating for your child and let your child be a person and a human. And so we teach them not to talk to strangers, and then strangers come up in the grocery store, they say hi. My son, who's 23, would literally be in the cart and someone would come say hi, he would physically turn around and and I would have to tell them, he doesn't talk to strangers. And just look at them like, you're a stranger. Why would you come up to a kid and talk to them? And I get the trying to be nice and everything. He's like, he could talk, teach him to be polite. Teaching them to be polite is not teaching them to talk to strangers. Or when they walk into the room, he would walk into my mom's house and he wouldn't say a thing yet because it took him a moment.
Exactly.
And my mom's like, he can speak. And I'm like, well, give him a moment. And she's like, here comes up, you speak. I'm like, but he's human. And he's a little bit of an introvert.
Yeah.
And so we talked about that,
with the kids.
Being respectful.
Because people will.
Not being respectful, but advocating for your child.
And when people think your children are being disrespectful or they're not friendly,
but they're being a human.
Yeah, and they're still a kid.
Right. So they're still learning the environment. You may be auntie so and so, but I may only see you every couple of months, and so. Or whatever, or walking into a room full of people. Yeah, you all may know all of these people, but then we also have to look at how do you see them? I remember my one friend said that her daughter drew a picture of her back when she was 3, and it was a head, arms, and legs right out of the head. And then fast forward a couple of years later, her son drew a picture, looked almost identical, and I was like, dang, is this how they see us?
Right.
It's funny because how do they see things? So we may be referencing our neck, and they're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. All I see is the head, arms, and arms. And so our conversation becomes crazy because they're looking at us like, what are you talking about? And we're like, what do you mean?
Right.
I know for me, what COVID has showed me through, parenting and being an administrator during that time was no understanding that we are the only people that see out of the eyes that we have.
Right.
So it is not relationship building behavior when we assume that the way that we see it is the only way. or the right way, because what you see may be different. So when we think about kids, if two children drew the same picture at the same age, you're like, oh dang, you don't see leg, you don't see feet, you don't see
right.
And so thinking about when a kid walks into a room full of people, you may know all these people, but to them it could be like,
and everybody's bigger than me, and it's just, it can be intimidating. So that is one of the things, like when Jackson goes places, I'm like, go give them a hug. That's your aunt such and such. You need it. No. Like I'll say, this is Jackson, and I'll hold his hand, and when he feels comfortable and he wants to walk around, he can, and sometimes I'll ask him, like I'll say, do you want to say hi, or do you want to give, like they'll try to give a fist bump, like, do you want to give a fist bump? And I'm like, no, you don't have to. Like if he says no, like he doesn't have to.
Right,
he does not have to give a fist bump.
I think Holly had said something in one of her sermons where she said, I forget the name of the title, but she said when she sent Abby into soccer, she's like, go make friends. Like, like we don't just go and make friends. That's what we call it. Like, go make friends. Like,
you just have to remember that. And I mean, this is even deeper. This is like a whole nother conversation that we can touch on another time. But like also when parents, or not parents, but just people in general try to say, oh, if you don't give me a hug, then you're not getting it. I do not like stuff like that. You're not getting, this dollar.
Yeah, no.
These strawberries.
That's a deeper conversation.
That's a whole other conversation.
For sure, but I'm glad you brought that up, because I definitely want to talk about that in a later time. But teaching our children to be bribed to do things that, respecting your space. Like, this is my space. I don't want to. Even as parents ourselves, what I've been really focusing on is not saying, and we said this too, I remember, I don't say to give me a kiss.
Exactly.
May I have a kiss?
Yes.
May I have a hug? Because I don't want you to feel like you have to allow me into your personal space. And that goes back to, yes, you're my child, but you don't belong to me. I don't just
you still don't have to give me a hug and kiss. Like that's something, even with Jackson, when he goes back to when he has tantrums sometimes, and I can tell he's just so flustered, I'll be like, do you need a hug? Would you like a hug? I'm here if you need one. And he'll come over and he'll hug me. And so that always helps him calm down. I'm realizing that. And so I think about 3 weeks ago, he was having like a tantrum about something. And he said, hug. And I said, okay. So I give him a hug. And guess what, parents? Even if you're mad or you're frustrated at their behaviors, they still need a hug.
That's that empathy that one you're talking about that I need.
You're so mad, you don't want to hug them.
They
need a hug. Sometimes. So that's what I've been asking him for. And I realized like that physical touch is so important for him. So like during those, he calms down immediately after a hug. So I'm like, so now, and I'm like, I didn't even realize that he really understood what I was asking. Like I thought, but him asking me for one day, I was like, oh, wow. Like that's awesome. Like, he's recognizing like, I need her embrace.
That's my safe space. And that's
even though I'm mad at that she said I can have something, I still want to hug her.
And that vice versa, like you said, even though you may have made me upset by doing this as my child, I still want you to know that I still love you. Like Tyler always, when she's in trouble, she'll say something like, but do you still love me? And I'm like, I will never stop loving you. But you did, I'm not happy with, but I will never stop loving you. That is not, that's your behavior doesn't negate that's not barometer. I love you a little bit, I love you a lot of it, I love you some of it, there's no barometer. Well, this is, it's always.
I know. We talk for hours in the live picture.
I know. It doesn't matter where we are. But I think that, your insight, your voice matters in the small spaces as well as the big spaces. So I'm excited to see how God is going to use you with that. And big boy mom, that's different. But also, like I said, in your profession and what you're doing. But I think that even coming on here is going to resonate even more. So I thank you for the tips and the tools that you've provided here for me and for listeners. And I just thank you for being part of being my friend.
Tawana, I love you.